Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Susan Glassman, co-president with Ruth Ersman of Women's Voices Raised for Social Justice. And I can't think of a more interesting and appropriate way to mark International Women's Day, which was 2 days ago, and Women's History Month than a program about Rung for Women. And in just a moment, I will be introducing tonight's speakers. But before I do, I want to mention our April 14th education program, which is titled Still Behind Bars, Criminal Legal Reform. And I'm thrilled to say that for the first time since the start of the pandemic, we will be gathering in person for that program at the Heights, which is the Richmond Heights Community Center. We will be requiring proof of vaccinations at that evening. Between now and then, there are a number of important community programs that we are co-sponsoring dealing with critically important voting rights and the current threat to Missouri's initiative petition process. Please visit the Women's Voices website for details about those programs. And please, while you're there, consider becoming a member of Women's Voices. When you become a member, you amplify the impact of our voice, which is incredibly important as we do our advocacy work. Tonight, we are delighted to have two of the leaders of Rung for Women speaking about their highly innovative approach to women's success. Lisa Weingarth is Vice President for Institutional Advancement of Rung. And prior to Rung, Lisa was Executive Director of the Women's Foundation of Greater St. Louis. Her whole career has been focused on advancing the status and safety of women. Lisa is a graduate of the Missouri School of Journalism, and in 2019, she was named one of the 20 most influential St. Louisans by Gazelle Magazine. Rhonda Gray is Vice President of Strategy and Innovation at Rung. Prior to Rung, Rhonda was a business performance advisor with Disparities, and before that, she was a consultant with Collaborative Strategies. Throughout her career, Rhonda has been passionate about supporting women in reaching their full potential. Rhonda holds a bachelor's degree from Alabama A&M, and she has a master's degree in counseling from UMSL. While Lisa and Rhonda are speaking, please type your questions and comments into the chat function of Zoom. And at the end of their presentations, our program vice president, Ellen Wentz, will facilitate a Q&A session. And please enjoy the session, and thank you again for being here. Lisa?
Yes, well, it's good to see everybody. Rhonda and I are so glad to be here and share, a little bit about what we're doing at Rung for Women. Rhonda is going to get us started here, so we'll share our PowerPoint on the screen. But just a little background: Rung has, many of you might have known of Rung when we were a nonprofit resale shop, which opened about 10, 12 years ago. We've really reimagined that initial vision, and we are a completely transformed version. We call it Rung 2.0, and we'll share with you how we are really working to transform women's lives here in St. Louis. So with that, I will mute and let Rhonda run with it.
Well, thank you. She's gonna let me run with it. Thank you. It's a pleasure for us to be here. I know this group, some names I've recognized, but I know your organization and Rung. We are certainly kindred spirits. While I always have mixed emotions, as we talk to other groups of passionate, committed women and whose mission is working towards equity and justice for everyone, particularly women, and wanting to end discrimination and protect the planet, as you all are doing. And it's mixed emotions, because while I'm happy that we have committed groups and organizations doing the work, I'm still saddened by the fact that the work needs to be done, and that we actually have to have an organization like yours and like Rung. But I think we have some shared values in terms of what we're working towards. It sounds like you all have heard the alarm sounding as we have, and that alarm sounding really is about women and many of the barriers that they face as they try to work towards having a better life. And so Rung is working to address that issue. And we want to just give you an overview tonight about how we have perceived just our portion of the problem we're going to tackle. Is quite a huge problem, as you all well know from the work you're doing. And we're taking a bite out of the elephant. And we love to partner and be thought partners with organizations like yours. So, you know, our vision for Rung is very much similar to the type of work you all are aspiring to. Rung started in 2010 as a resale boutique that actually was designed to or started to help women just to get some professional attire. You know, the idea was to help women who wanted to advance in their careers or wanted to get jobs. And oftentimes these were women who were coming out of crisis. And so we partnered with shelters and employment centers and wanted to offer a space where women can come and get some clothes, and not just get that, to get community and camaraderie and support, and do so with dignity. And so Rung started, this is why Lisa said it's Rung 2.0. The early days of Rung was really as a resale boutique. But we recognized even then that while women were trying their best to climb the ladder of success and to do better with their lives, and we were climbing the ladder with tennis shoes on and stilettos and boots and you name it. And for some women, they realized, hey, I'm climbing the ladder and I can't get past the rung that I'm on. And for some women, they realized that the ladder was leaning up against the wrong wall. And so with that, Rung realized that we had to evolve and sort of iterate on the work that we were doing. And we wanted to go beyond simply just providing professional attire. And so we looked around at the landscape of what's going on in St. Louis. And I was part of, I think, that landscape at the time. I was the executive director of a nonprofit called Almost Home. And we served pregnant and parenting women and their children, or young women and their children. And I will tell you, it was exhausting work and a labor of love, but to serve women in crisis was extremely difficult. They faced many barriers, but I was happy to say that we were able to actually get a lot of those young women out of crisis to a place of stability. And then once we did, there was no services really for them to help them get to the next level. And interestingly enough, I began doing research to see what was out there. At the same time, our founder of Rung was looking for those same type of organizations, and finding none, she decided to evolve Rung into what it is today. So in 2017, she closed the boutique and we reopened as Rung for Women, doing the work that we currently do. So why do we exist? It's interesting because I know you all are doing some work that very much overlaps with the work we're doing and why our work is important to us. But ultimately, we want to make sure that we are addressing the barriers and the inequities that women face. We exist because we know. This is not conjecture. This is research based. And not only that, it's also experience based from the women who are coming to us every day. Women are facing systemic, economic, social, and health barriers to their wealth creation. I mean, our intent, pure and simple, that is our bat signal as far as I'm concerned. That is the thing that guides our work. It is the reason why we do what we do. And as you know, that's not a long sentence, but that's a huge obstacle to tackle. I don't think I have to tell you guys that. You ladies are doing similar work, as I said, but anytime you want to address issues and not in a very just a grassroots way or a transactional way, and you really want to get to the root and source of problems and want to look at systemic issues, you got an uphill climb. But Rung is up for the task. And so we feel strongly that we can do that work. And I thought this was a very fitting depiction of the type of race women are running. I love the fact that women, we still running in heels and suits. And yet we are facing all these obstacles to our success. So that's why Rung exists. And one of the things that we looked at as we decided, you know, who do we want to be? Do we want to be the agency that simply helps women get a job? That was an option. But as I said, we looked at the landscape of what was already out there, what was available. There are many organizations that are helping women get jobs, and they're doing it well. And they're helping women primarily who are coming out of either crisis situation. They're helping women who were on government assistance and are formerly incarcerated, or maybe have mental illness and have various barriers to employment. Where Rung is different is we really wanted to address that woman who's in the middle. Sometimes it's called the benefits cliff. In the work I was doing, I like to call it poverty purgatory, where you're making too much money to get any kind of government assistance or any support like child care assistance, where you're not making enough money though to meet all of your needs and to pay all your expenses, and certainly not making enough money so that you can save and invest and truly become financially independent. That middle group of women was largely being ignored. And the services that were available to them, as I mentioned, were services that were probably much more transactional and were helping them when they got into a situational crisis, which is desperately needed. If somebody needs food, you should absolutely give them food. If somebody, kids need school supplies and things like that, we want to help families and help moms with that. But what Rung decided is, let's not just manage people suffering. We want to help those women in the middle, and we want to help them really by helping them create wealth, and doing so in a way that's going to make their lives financially sustainable. And then they can make a contribution and it will impact the broader community, even beyond the woman. And so Rung really, wants to be about a movement. And we looked at, how does that happen, right? So if you want to help women create wealth, what are the things that accelerate that? What are the things that really are the contributors to wealth? We already know it, as Jason Purnell, who some of you guys may know, his research and that he's done, he said, we don't have a problem with trying to figure out what to do. We have a distribution problem with the information on how it's done, and a distribution problem of getting to the right people who need the help. So Rung has realized that and done the research to see, in order for women to really move towards wealth creation and also wealth transfer, this has to happen like this. Baseline, you need education, skills, and training, right? And a lot of women who we work with, they come to us with that. You have to focus on the careers and income. We'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the biggest barriers for women is oftentimes the careers that women feel like they are sort of funneled into. Then it's financial health. Financial education has always been one of those areas where it was a mystery oftentimes to women, particularly if they are in a relationship or have a partner. They oftentimes might not be the person who's responsible. And so financial health became very intimidating to women. And then entrepreneurship and small business, we know that small businesses employ the vast majority of employees in our country. And people oftentimes think it's big corporations, but these are small businesses. And women have an interest in entrepreneurship and are starting small businesses at an extremely accelerated pace. Affordable housing is also an accelerator for many women, particularly women of color. This has been a particular barrier as they've been sort of locked out of purchasing a home and being able to build that equity that's going to give them some assets. And then women don't invest in retirement at the same rates, and oftentimes find themselves having to work well beyond retirement years and unable to support themselves as they age. And then obviously with that, not having enough money to do any kind of wealth transfer, which then repeats the cycle for another generation with their children. And so we know what accelerates wealth. So since Rung is in the business of removing barriers and wanting to help women get around these barriers and obstacles, we had to figure out, okay, well, what are the decelerators? What's blocking women from wealth? And there are a number of these. We're highlighting the ones that are probably the primary barriers, and that I'll be kind of reviewing tonight. One is health. Oftentimes people are not thinking of the health disparities, or they're thinking of health in terms of just physical health. And, at Rung, we look at the social determinants of health, which is everything from your physical health, emotional, mental, the environment that you grow up in, with zip code being one of the biggest predictors oftentimes of, certainly academic success and people's later success in life. Where you grow up and what you're exposed to becomes an echo chamber of your overall health and well-being. So that's definitely a decelerator and a barrier. Debt, women incur debt. And oftentimes, because we're trying to do the right thing, women are the fastest growing group who are becoming educated and getting degrees, even outpacing men in some respects and in some age groups. But as we all know, student debt and debt that women might incur to start a business because they don't have access to capital is crippling them. The big elephant, the 500-pound gorilla in the room is occupational segregation. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight, because as I was doing the research years ago, really trying to understand, well, if women are more educated and women are getting degrees at higher rates, and women now are having actually less children, I couldn't figure out, so what's going on? What's with the wealth inequality? Why is there still such a huge gap? And primary reason for that gap is occupational segregation. And that is women being funneled into jobs that are lower paying, in roles where they don't have the benefits, the employment capital to really build and develop into a career where they can be financially self-sufficient. And then also caretaking, including not just the fact that women are having, do have children and oftentimes have to leave work for maternity leave, but more and more women are being sandwiched by taking care of their children and also having to take care of parents. And so with those caretaking responsibilities, which largely fall on women, if that takes you away from work, then you're oftentimes not getting the same opportunities in terms of your career growth. And then there's just the overall negative environmental conditions that I've alluded to. And there's any number of things, and those can contribute to all of these other decelerators. So the major barriers to wealth creation, when I think of the major barriers to wealth creation, it's interesting because I can see how they've shown up in my own life. I can see how they've shown up in the lives of my friends and coworkers and colleagues as we talk about our own sort of career journeys and career trajectories. I don't think you have a name for it at the time or when you were experiencing something, but certainly I think all of you all on this call at certain points throughout your career may have experienced some of the barriers that we'll talk about. As I mentioned, one of the first barriers is occupational segregation. Discrimination and bias continue, unfortunately, to be a huge barrier. As I mentioned, the work you all are doing in terms of addressing inequality and injustices, social injustices, those things are still affecting women and women of color in particular disproportionately. Then we have the wage gap. The wage gap is really interesting because, the part of me with just common sense, it's like, how do we keep getting away with this? Men and women doing the exact same job, but men getting paid more money. Clearly a man thought that up, but I don't understand why we're still having to fight that battle. But the wage gap is real, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's policies and legislation. I am still very surprised to find out too that there are policies that have not, or legislation that hasn't been passed as it relates to sometimes affordable childcare or things having to do with access to childcare, equal pay initiatives. And I think to me, like I said, I don't understand, it's common sense and it's in common fairness that, we should do this so we can have a richer, better society, and yet it's still not being done. So policies and legislation is something that Rung certainly wants to have a voice in as women, and we want to have the women we serve also be a part of that and raise their voices. So we would love to talk to your organization more about the advocacy work you're doing, and as we really get into that, how we can partner. And then lastly, there's the health and well-being disparities that I alluded to, everything from women and reproductive health and reproductive rights constantly being challenged. And as I mentioned, the environmental conditions that cause a lot of the disproportionate health issues that women face, those become barriers to your overall wealth creation. So let's take a look at this nasty occupational segregation, like I said, 800-pound gorilla, because occupational segregation is one of those things where it's interesting. And I know Lisa experiences this all the time. Some of you all may, right now we're experiencing interesting landscape as it relates to our employment. And I know in my previous work, employers would say, every day, all day, I was sitting down with small business owners, mid-sized business owners, and doing consulting. And they said, Rhonda, we need people, and I'm open, and we want a diverse workforce. And, we just can't find women. We just can't find women of color who, meet it. And I'm like, where are you looking? And it turns out that in particular industries, it is very challenging because women are underrepresented, and their underrepresentation is creating part of the problem. And so how does this, I don't know where the start was, but I certainly think that one of the biggest issues that are causing occupational segregation is we just have gender norms and expectations that really influence women's career options. I call it the pink and blue job effect, right? There's jobs that girls are supposed to do, and there's jobs that boys are supposed to do. And I think even I was doing a session last night with some of our clients, we call them members, but they were talking about what they perceive to be like the pink and blue jobs, because at Rung, we want women to be represented in those areas where women typically wouldn't go. And I said, why is it that you all think women don't go into skilled trades or to manufacturing or to technology? And I heard all the usual suspects. Men are stronger. That's dirty work. I don't want to mess up my fingernails. I was like, and I said, and that's kind of been sort of the attitude that all of us have been socialized and sort of domesticated to believe. And what that's created is this notion that there are jobs for women and jobs for men. And we're chipping away at that because we do see more men in some of those typical female professions. I had a male nurse yesterday when I went in for a procedure at the hospital. So it's pretty interesting because you don't often see that. But there are still far too many occupations that pay well and where women can do the same job as men. And even when they enter that field, they're not making the same amount of money. And then there's a reluctance on the part of women to enter into those careers because of their fear of how they might be perceived, or if it will be a female-friendly environment. So when women are funneled into these low-paid roles and sectors, that has an enormous impact, as we saw during the pandemic. Women were largely working, a lot of women who were working in service industries, home health and nursing and healthcare, and and I would say even teaching. I have a lot of friends who are educators and had to shift to a virtual format, and it was exhausting work, and that largely affected women. And when restaurants had to close because of the pandemic, and women who were working even side jobs, or maybe it was their main jobs in restaurant or hospitality, they lost their jobs. And, how do you recover from something like that, particularly when you think your options are limited? So women, especially those of color, they experience higher unemployment rates because of the types of jobs they're in. And once again, once you get stuck, once you kind of fall into the pit and into that grave, it's really hard to start digging yourself out. And the way out really is for somebody to throw a ladder in for you to climb. And that's one of the things Rung is trying to do. We also have obviously more men in senior roles than women. I meant to Google it because we had this conversation last night during my class. I said, I can't remember if it's 2 women or 4 women now that are CEO of Fortune 500 companies. I think it's 2. Whatever it is, the number is too ridiculously low for that to be the case in terms of women's representation in leadership roles, because we know women can lead. So occupational segregation is one of the areas that Rung is wanting to tackle in the work we do. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're doing it. And then there's that wage gap that I mentioned. I'm not going to obviously read you this screen. It's pretty detailed, but I think it shares a lot. For every dollar a man makes, women make 81 cents. If you're a woman of color, that's actually 63 cents. A dollar, and the difference between $1 and 63 cents is significant. And for the difference only to be because of your race and your gender is unacceptable. Then there's discrimination and bias. We used to talk about women hitting that glass ceiling. I've heard women say now, well, the ceiling is, is brick. The ceiling is they keep raising the ceiling higher and making the ceiling harder and harder to penetrate. And some of the reasons for that are, what I call the isms, racism, sexism, classism. One of the members last night said, don't forget tokenism. They sometimes hire women just so they can hire somebody that's a woman and they need to meet a quota, and then they don't treat you right when you get there. So I said, okay, I didn't have tokenism on my slide, but I'll be sure to say that. And then there's the mommy tax, being penalized for having children. You think about the implication of once a woman has a child and takes maternity leave, obviously, to take care of a baby. If she misses even 8 weeks, 3 months, 6 months of work to care for her child, she's missing out on opportunities, whether it be networking, whether it be opportunities for development that gives men or women who don't have a baby an edge. And so it becomes a penalty overall over the course of her career. And there's just like a lack of workplace policies and practices that support women. And this is one of the areas too that, we feel like we really need to address, simply because if we're going to support women and getting into some of these non-traditional roles and working in jobs and in industries where they're underrepresented, then we want to make sure we're not throwing them into the lion's den and they're going into environments that are going to support women and be female friendly. Women are often also really concerned about sexual harassment, particularly in some of those fields that are heavily male dominated and blue collar, like the skilled trades, construction and things like that. But obviously that happens even in the corporate environment, in business environments. And then there's limited access to professional networks. I heard a number of women say we used to have golf tournaments at Almost Home, and it was almost exclusively men. And I had some women with a foursome one year from Edward Jones, and they said in order for us to get the deals, we had to learn how to play golf. If we wanted to network, we had to learn how to play golf. So it's the truth. Then there's the health and well-being disparities. I won't spend a lot of time on that because this is exhaustive. I mean, overall, women spend, 15% of their lives in unhealthy conditions, men 12%. And I know that sounds like that's just a 3% difference, but the areas in which it's different are really critical areas. I'm talking about heart disease, cancer, certain forms of, even mental illness that are disproportionately affecting women. Obviously, due to some reproductive issues, women have health issues around that men do not have. That impacts their overall ability to work. And if you don't have optimal health, physically, mentally, emotionally, you can't be as effective in your jobs and career. So how is Rung helping women to transform their lives? This is a big old problem. And it wasn't until I was just what I was doing every time I talk through this, I go, Lisa, what's wrong with us? Are we crazy? Like, how are we going to do all that? How are we going to tackle this? But we're going to tackle it because we got great women like you who are also working on the challenge and who are doing some phenomenal work in tackling these same issues. And so we have a video that kind of gives an overview of what
all those things that you pretty much saw as a life is going to be removed when you're here.
Rung for Women is a career advancement and empowerment agency.
Rung is a space for women to help them get to that next level in their lives.
Here at Rung, we have a mandatory 6-week coaching program, and that's group coaching and in-person coaching, just general life coaching. We have childcare for whenever anyone comes up for a class. We have yoga classes. We have gardening time, and everything that is grown in our garden gets used in our kitchen downstairs. There is financial support services. There are career placement services. We also have access to counseling services. We have access to medical center. We have a full gym here. Everything here is free for members.
When I first signed up for the program, I was unemployed. I was pregnant and then the pandemic hit. And now I am working full-time at Square and I love it.
In the 6 to 8 months I've been at Rung already, I have grown so much. I am going after my dreams. And if I hadn't gotten out of that stuck place in my life, it wouldn't have ever happened. And I really credit Rung for all of that.
Creating SMART goals was the theme of Rung, and that was something that translated with coaching, counseling, and then just in like the courses that were available, like advanced professional skills. Just even walking through the doors, I felt like wanted. I felt like we're here for you, and that's just a very different experience than I've ever been used to.
The thing that's helped me the most has been building connections and friendships with the other women here and just learning from them and sharing our stories and laughing together and crying together and growing together. And it's really just an experience that you can't really buy.
I knew that I was going to have an entire community in my corner.
I can come here and set up a day basically and just know I'll be at Rung that day and actually look forward to it. It frees me up to be a person instead of just a mom or an employee.
Women definitely put everybody else before they put themselves first. And to have a place like Rung that actually makes you do the work to put yourself forward is incredible.
And just give yourself a chance in anything. Just give yourself a chance. Don't count yourself out before you even start.
How do I get it off the video? There we go. All right. So that's the overview. We thought it'd be best you heard from the women themselves. Lisa and I can go on and on about Rung and what we do. But the women's, I think their testimonials speak volume. And so Rung, as they mentioned, we are an organization that works collaboratively with other organizations to provide a set of co-located services that are intended to remove barriers for women. And so you saw women gardening. We partner with Urban Harvest and have gardening, and we have services to address their mental and physical well-being. So you saw people in the gym and doing yoga. We partner with Prosperity Connection around the financial education. Rung really has become the one-stop shop for women, as one of the members mentioned, to remove the barriers, and so they can get the services they need under one roof. So who we serve, and this is evolving, we are now serving women who are at least 25 years old. It used to be 21, but we realized that, the average age that we were serving was a little older, and women were a little more prepared to really work on their career interests. We want to serve women who are interested in career advancement or full-time employment. and obviously who can come on site and work with us. You know, one of the criteria we have is the women, their personal income can't currently be between 150 and 250% of the federal poverty level. And we use the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's salary calculator to calculate that. Because what we want, like I said, is those women in the middle. And right there is where you're making too much money to get the government's help and to get assistance, but not enough money to make it on your own. Women who are employed at least part-time, we have given some consideration because, like I said, during COVID, and a lot of women were displaced from their jobs, and so they might have been unemployed. We want women to provide the proof of income so we can know we can work with them, and they have to have a high school diploma or GED. We have also targets around our demographic goals because we want to be diverse and inclusive. And so we have special consideration around race and ethnicity targets. And also we give special consideration to employers who we might partner with. So our theory of change, Rung, we're tackling a huge problem, but we didn't want a complex solution. We really wanted to simplify it. And so our goal is to help women create wealth. We believe that when women are able to develop four key areas, when they're able to develop their human capital, which is their skills, their education, and their experience and training, when they're able to develop their financial capital, increasing their income, their savings, their credits, building assets and resources, when they develop their social capital, which is a network of both bridging and bonding relationships. And as we all know, relationships are critical to overall success. And then when they build their health capital and have optimal physical, emotional, and psychological functioning, that's why I said health is pretty comprehensive for us, that will allow them to create value for themselves and others. So we feel like when women are able to, we call these our 4 pillars. When women are able to develop in these 4 pillars, which is what our program is specifically targeted on, we believe they can increase their assets and their income, which ultimately will help them to build wealth. So our pillars around, I just kind of went through them. That the previous slide sort of depicts them in a more visual way. But as I mentioned, human capital, financial capital, social capital, and health capital are the 4 core areas that Rung is focused its work on. That's not to say that there are other areas that don't need to be addressed, but obviously one agency can't be everything to everybody. And the way we do the work in terms of how we're helping women, particularly around that human capital area, we want women to develop skills that are going to be highly leverageable, high income skills, in-demand skills. And so obviously there are many skills that women come to us already having worked and having developed. But what we want to do is focus on those areas where they're going to really be able to leverage that so that they can propel themselves into careers or into industries where they have the greatest likelihood of earning beyond a family sustaining wage. So at least a family sustaining wage, but we'd love to see them earn beyond that. And so we've selected 6 pathways to start, and those are technology, geospatial, advanced manufacturing, health sciences, business acumen, and trades. And I think literally it must have been an hour ago or 2 hours ago, right as I was leaving the office, we got an email, blast and an announcement that one of our members had accepted a job in 3D geospatial production as a 3D geospatial production technician with the organization. And I was like excited and was like celebrating the win. And then it occurred to me on the drive home, I have no idea what a 3D geospatial production technician does, but it sounds like you got to be really smart to do it. So that was it's nice to hear successes like those. And we're hearing successes like those regularly from our women, particularly as they go into those pathways. We consider success for our members, obviously the attainment of a new job with the emphasis on those high potential career pathways, but we don't want you to just get a job. We want to make sure that women are being retained in jobs. And as I mentioned, that we're working with these employers on creating an inclusive environment so that retention is high. We also want to focus on the career advancement and promotion. There are many women who are in careers that they like, enjoy, but they've hit that glass ceiling and don't know how they can sort of break through that. We want to make sure that they attain a family sustaining or living wage. You know, I always say there's no glory in helping women manage their suffering. You don't want to help poor people be poor more comfortably. We certainly don't want to help, you know, working class women be more comfortable working multiple jobs. So we want overall increased wealth. But from a psychological and emotional standpoint, the reason we have a coaching program, and a pretty robust coaching program, I mean, you get 6 months of coaching, we want to build that self-efficacy, that overall belief in what's possible for women. And we want to shatter those myths and stereotypes that women have been socialized into believing about themselves. And then individual mental and physical health goals. We think that's an important part of making sure that women have the emotional and mental stamina, but also can understand how to focus on their own self-care and address stress and some of the, you know, obstacles that we know are going to come when you are working in your career. And then, as I mentioned, building social capital is absolutely key. And we, you know, require a lot of volunteers and partnering to do that, but that's an area we definitely want to develop even more. And so we're off to a good start. Rung just started in 2017, and already, I mean, these numbers are changing every day since I left work, this number has changed. But right now we have 65 members who are receiving career services. We have nearly 270 members who are enrolled. We have a cohort of members that are actually starting tomorrow. Our first cohort started in 2020 in the spring. Our second cohort started last fall. And then our third cohort will start in March. And so of all of those women, we have 65 in our career services, 19 have gotten new jobs or promotion with an average salary of around $46,000, the lowest being around 38, but the highest being 58. And as I mentioned, those numbers are changing every day. And we're happy to report too that we have quite a few members who are interested in those pathways, which is key because, as I mentioned, we don't want women to just go into any job. We really want to leverage the jobs that are going to give them the best chances of being able to build wealth for themselves. So I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime, Lisa, and talk about, you know, becoming a change agent overall and how we can work together to address this issue.
Well, this is a whole Zoom full of change agents. I see so many familiar faces from Karen, hi, Sandra, Murdoch, hi, everybody. I see all my old friends from when I was at the Women's Foundation. It's so good to see you on the other end of hopefully the pandemic and here at Rung. But so there are lots of opportunities to get involved with Rung. You're such an engaged and active group of women, and we would love to engage you at Rung. Lots of volunteer opportunities if you're you know, ready to get out and do that sort of thing. Everything from you know, working out in our garden. We have a 3.5 acre campus in South St. Louis in the Fox Park neighborhood. And we grow a lot of food during the summer. 100 pounds of food a week is produced off of our garden that Urban Harvest manages. So the garden's a great opportunity to get out. But we also have opportunities for you to really use your, you know, your skills and talents and share those with our members. So we're looking for people to lead workshops, everything from, you know, building your confidence at work, salary negotiation, those kind of, you know, resume review, that kind of thing. We're looking for volunteers to help out with practicing interview skills, all the things that women really need support with as they're entering into new jobs or working towards that promotion. Also looking for folks to serve as one-on-one mentoring partners with our members. So that's really a 6-month commitment, but where you're paired one-on-one with one of our members who might be pursuing a career pathway that you've had some success in, and really being a mentor to them through that process so that you can support a woman one-on-one. If you're interested in any of that, I mean, of course you can email me, but Megan is our volunteer coordinator, and you could shoot Megan an email at megan@rungforwomen.org. There are a lot more volunteer opportunities than this, but we would love to get some of you involved in supporting women and working on our campus. I know this is a group of engaged activist women, and there are probably people on this call that could could teach me or teach us what legislation and policies we need to be working towards to support women. But these are a few, important pieces of legislation and policies that we know would really make a difference for our members. And I know many of you have been working on these issues for a long time, and but we would love to, if this is an area that Women's Voices is interested in, really developing an agenda around, we would love to be able to partner with you in those efforts. We have, we're seeing day to day how these policies are holding women back from really achieving their full potential. So, paid leave is incredibly important for women and for our members. And paid leave legislation, the Paycheck Fairness Act, there has been a lot of movement to require employers to post salary ranges. We saw New York City pass legislation that requires all employers to post salary ranges. Would love to see St. Louis City do the same thing, St. Louis County. So, and we think we have a mayor that would probably be willing to partner with us on that potentially, or some of our Board of Aldermen members. So would love to see some of that work happening in St. Louis. Access to quality, affordable childcare. No secret that is a key issue that holds women back, especially during the pandemic. That was a challenge before, and it's even more of a challenge now. And banning questions about salary history during interviews. Anything we can do to, really support women in asking for what they need and not allow what they've been given to hold them back and keep them from really climbing the ladder and earning what they deserve. Rhonda, you can go to the next one. And then here are just a few upcoming events that we have going on. So just wanted to share some of these things with you. We've got this really cool t-shirt collaboration. If you have people in your life that would like a cool shirt around the wage gap on Equal Pay Day, we're releasing this t-shirt collaboration with Golden Gems, which is a store, really a women-focused new store in St. Louis. And it says, girls just want to get paid. So kind of a fun take on, on that question around the wage gap. And then we also have a really a chocolate give back happening this month for Women's History Month, a bourbon tasting. So just some fun events that you could get engaged with as well. I will stop talking now. I'm sure that you have lots of questions, and we only have about 10 minutes left. So Rhonda and I are here for it. So what can we answer for you?
Thank you. That was very good. Karen Francis would like
Karen Francis, I knew you'd have a question.
Of course. How do women find out about Rung?
That's a good question. So we launched our program last March. So we've been, we've had about a year of program operation under our belt now. We began our recruitment cycle during the pandemic. So all of the initial approaches that we thought we would take to recruit women we had to throw them out the window because none of, the street team, doing outreach, going to community gatherings wasn't possible. Digital marketing has been a huge funnel for us to get potential members. So we've really built a robust social media presence, have recruited many members through our social media presence. We also have 8 collaborative partners that have staff members who are co-located in our facility, everything from Safe Connections to, Provident Behavioral Health. And so those co-design partners have been really supportive in helping to get the word out to their client base and people that they think would be ready for this level, this rung on the ladder of climbing the economic ladder. And now referrals. So now that we've had 2 cohorts enter, the 3rd cohort, we did start seeing a lot more referrals from that cohort. We had 1,000 women apply in November of 2020 for 100 spots. So I think that really says something for the opportunity that we're providing, but also the moment that we're in. I mean, women in November of 2020, think where women were. We were, many were still, homeschooling and working full time and, just trying to figure out how am I going to make this all work, or lost their job due to the pandemic. And so, this was a real need then, and we're starting to make a big difference now in women's lives. And it's very exciting. Okay. Any other questions?
Wonderful. Well, Susan Glassman says we're advocates for paid family leave. What work do we need to do to ensure that utilizing family leave doesn't work against career advancements? And men are often reluctant to take family leave because they believe that it will hold them back.
Well, first of all, we need to encourage men to take paid family leave. And we need to make sure that we scrap the words maternity leave, and then we make it more about families and supporting families and giving men the same opportunity to spend time at home with their new child that women get. When we start with an imbalanced household at the very beginning, we're creating that gender norm that women need to be the primary caregiver and then get to go out and go back to work right away from the very beginning. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but encouraging men to take paid family leave is so important. And I think just making sure that we're really careful about the words that we use when we talk about family leave. It's about supporting families and not just about supporting women.
Excellent. Yes. Looks like this is two people, Ruth Heyman and Lisa Mandel, have a couple of questions. Do you want to ask them in person?
Okay. Hey, I'm sorry. We're on an iPad and it's a little difficult to see. So thank you so much for this presentation. And I have to say that as I've watched Rung just explode, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, where did Rung come from, and da da da. And I found out where Rung comes from and who's behind Rung. And I have to say that this is the first time I've seen this kind of money put behind something that needed to be put behind, 100 years ago. So let's do more of it. I am a real estate broker, and I focus on teaching people how to invest to create wealth. I create affordable housing, and I want to talk to you, doesn't have to be right now, but I want to talk to you guys about a Rung North, which I'd really like to see. And I have a building for you. And then I would also love to be part of educating women about buying multifamilies first instead of single families, and how they can create wealth through a different, not a white picket fence kind of house. So I'll let you go with that and let other people speak, but thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Would you put your contact information in the
Of course.
chat?
Yeah, of course.
Great.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yes. And Lisa put her email in there. Okay, I don't see the questions in the chat. I did have one. Where do you get the money for Rung?
Yeah, so our founder, it's no secret, our founder is the granddaughter of Jack Taylor, who founded Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So she made the initial investment in really developing the program, building the campus, and getting the program off the ground. She committed to funding us through our pilot year. Pilot year's over. So now we're beginning to seek additional support to make sure that the program is, sustainable in the long term in St. Louis. If you saw in the news recently, I know Susan brought this up to me the other day, but we did just receive our first federal grant, which we're very excited about. We got a $250,000 investment from the Economic Development Administration to help us, really increase access to our Women in Geospatial Careers program. So we're, that's just the start for us, but yeah, we're really starting to work to diversify our funding this year with a ramp off period, over the course of the next 7 years.
That's wonderful. Do you have a success rate, or you've only been going 2 years, right?
Yeah, we're just finishing. Our first cohort is just starting to enter into jobs. Okay. So it's a transformational program. And what that means is it's not a Band-Aid, right? It's a long-term, it's a long-term program, and it's a big investment in the women that we bring in as members. So typically the program takes 10 to 12 months. We're trying to find ways to make it more efficient and faster, but that's how it stands right now. And we're just starting to see our first members enter into jobs. So now, as of today, we have 21 members who have entered into new jobs because of Rung. And so every week, we're finding more and more stories about women who have found their way to increased income because of the work that we've been able to do at Rung.
That's wonderful. It looks like Karen Francis is back again. She's raised her hand.
So, was there a model that you saw when you developed it? Because I was aware when you were starting, but I had not heard of any models. So, are you the model for other cities?
I'll let Rhonda share that because she did the initial research here on all the promising practices. Yeah,
that's a great question. In my early research, I found what we consider to be some very promising models with some promising approaches, but there was nothing that fully captured what we felt Allie had for her vision, and also what we felt like we needed, particularly for women in St. Louis. And so there were organizations like CityLink in Cincinnati and Empath. I believe Empath is in Boston. There were a Princeton organization. I remember when in doing the research, I had called myself maybe 10 to 12 different organizations, some of which were doing more traditional workforce development. There were some that were dedicated to just getting women in middle skilled jobs, particularly around like the skilled trades. And so we kind of took the best of everything that we found and packaged it together. And so I like to say we have a hybrid promising program because it's like a mixture of some of the best work that we found throughout the country.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I have no more questions. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Susan, do you have any closing remarks or?
Yes, just I thought this was excellent. It was really wonderful I've been hearing about Rung. I've been meaning to go down and visit. I really wanted to know more, and this really filled in a lot of gaps in my knowledge. And I just think it's such a fabulous addition to what is available to women in St. Louis. So hopefully a lot of us will volunteer and we'll step forward to help. And we wish you every success. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you for having us. And I will say too, if y'all want to come for a tour, we'd love to have a Women's Voices tour of the building this spring. So just let us know if anyone would like to come down for that.
Right.
We'll make a date.
One other thing that's a little off the subject, but I was very excited to hear from Lisa Mandel and Ruth Heyman about their affordable housing ideas. We are very focused on affordable housing. I don't think this idea of investing in a multifamily building as a pathway to both wealth creation and an affordable housing situation has been discussed, and we would love to talk to you further about this. So thank you for participating and for raising that.
Yes,
anytime.
And with that, I wish you all a good evening and thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Thank you. Good to see so many of you. Have a good night.
Thank you.